I'm Amanda Wilson, 32, and I never thought I'd have to fire my own sister. But when Melissa threw that ice-cold Coke in my face on my first day as regional director and made me clean it up in front of her entire team, something inside me broke. The sister I grew up with was gone, replaced by this power-hungry stranger who didn't know I now controlled her fate, and the fate of everyone who laughed as cola dripped down my new silk blouse. They'd all learn soon enough. Family loyalty only extends so far. Before I get into the whole messy story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below. If this kind of family revenge drama is something you enjoy, hit that like button and subscribe to my channel for more stories about justice served. Trust me, you'll want to stick around to see how I handled my sister's team of enablers. Melissa and I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Columbus, Ohio. As sisters only 2 years apart, we were competitive but close. Our parents always emphasized family loyalty above all else. Blood is thicker than water, our mother would say whenever we fought. And for most of our lives, we believed it. We shared clothes, secrets, and dreams about our futures. Melissa wanted to work in marketing, and I dreamed of running my own business someday. We promised to always have each other's backs. Throughout high school, the dynamic shifted. Melissa was the popular cheerleader, with a social circle that expanded every year, while I was the studious one with a smaller group of friends, but excellent grades. I got into an Ivy League school with a scholarship, while Melissa went to the state university. I never flaunted my academic success, knowing how sensitive she was about living in my shadow, as she once confessed during a rare vulnerable moment. After college, we both moved to Chicago to start our careers. I joined a management consulting firm, while Melissa landed a position at Horizon Marketing, a mid-sized agency with several big clients. Initially, we met for Sunday brunches and called each other regularly. But as years passed, our relationship began to fray around the edges. Melissa cancelled plans more frequently, and when we did meet, she'd talk exclusively about her rapid rise at Horizon, from junior account manager to team lead within 3 years. The culture is cutthroat, she explained over cocktails one evening. You have to be ruthless to survive there. But I'm good at it, really good. There was something cold in her eyes when she said this, something I hadn't noticed before. But I brushed it off, attributing it to the stress of corporate life. Meanwhile, I was building my reputation as a turnaround specialist, helping struggling divisions become profitable again. My consulting firm sent me to different cities, and I'd sometimes go months without seeing Melissa. Our parents worried about our growing distance, but assured themselves it was just a phase. Sisters always find their way back to each other, our father said during a holiday dinner, not noticing how Melissa tensed at his words. Last Christmas, during our family gathering, Melissa announced her promotion to marketing director at Horizon's Chicago office. Everyone celebrated, toasting her success. When I shared that I was considering a position as regional director at Carson Enterprises, a direct competitor to Horizon, Melissa's smile froze. Carson's a sinking ship, she said dismissively. Their marketing division is a mess. They've lost 3 major clients this year. That's exactly why they need someone like me, I replied. I specialize in turnarounds. Well, good luck with that, Melissa said, her tone making it clear she didn't think I'd succeed. What I didn't tell my family that night was that Carson had specifically recruited me to overhaul their marketing division, the very division that competed directly with Melissa's team at Horizon. And what I didn't know then was that the mess at Carson was partly due to aggressive tactics from Melissa's team, who had poached clients through methods that bordered on unethical. I accepted the position at Carson in February. The CEO, James Carson himself, had been refreshingly honest during our interviews. Our marketing division needs a complete restructuring, he admitted. The previous director let standards slip, morale is low, and we've lost market share. We need someone who isn't afraid to make tough decisions, even if it means letting people go. I understand, I had replied. Sometimes you need to cut out the dead wood to save the tree. What I didn't realize was how personal this job would become, or that the first branch I'd have to cut would be my own sister. The irony was that I hadn't even known Melissa, had moved from Horizon to Carson 3 months earlier, taking her entire team with her in a package deal that Carson had been too desperate to refuse. Our parents had mentioned she'd changed jobs, but not where to. Melissa had deliberately kept that information from me. The stage was set for a collision neither of us had anticipated, me, the new regional director with a mandate to clean house, and Melissa, the marketing director, who thought her position was secure. Family loyalty was about to be tested in ways our parents had never imagined when they taught us that blood comes first. My first day at Carson Enterprises arrived with the kind of spring morning that promised new beginnings. I had selected my outfit carefully, a navy blue suit with a cream silk blouse, professional but not intimidating. I wanted to make a strong first impression without seeming unapproachable. James Carson had given me full authority to evaluate every department under my purview, including marketing, and implement whatever changes I deemed necessary. "You'll have an office on the executive floor," James had told me. "I want the division heads to understand that you report directly to me." What he hadn't mentioned was that one of those division heads would be my sister. I arrived early, at 7:30 a.m., wanting time to settle in before meeting my new team. The receptionist, a young woman named Taylor, greeted me warmly. "We've been looking forward to your arrival, Ms. Wilson. Mr. Carson speaks very highly of you." She escorted me to my office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago skyline. On my desk was a welcome package, company policies, organizational charts, performance metrics for each department. I flipped through the marketing section, noting the declining numbers and client retention issues. The department head's name was listed as M. Wilson. My heart stopped. It couldn't be. Before I could process this information, James Carson appeared at my door. "Amanda. Welcome aboard. I see you're already digging into the numbers. Any initial thoughts?" I held up the organizational chart. "Is the marketing director Melissa Wilson?" James looked surprised. "Yes. She came over from Horizon about 3 months ago, brought her whole team with her. They've been, well, let's say results have been mixed." "Do you know her?" I took a deep breath. "She's my sister." James's eyebrows shot up. "Your sister? You never mentioned that during the interviews." "I had no idea she worked here," I explained. "We're not as close as we used to be." James frowned, clearly concerned about the potential conflict. "This complicates things. The marketing department is one that needs significant restructuring." "It won't be a problem," I assured him, though I wasn't entirely convinced myself. "I can be objective. The company comes first." "If you're sure," he said, still looking doubtful. "There's a division heads meeting at 10 a.m. You'll see her then." After James left, I sat at my desk, trying to process this development. Melissa had moved to Carson without telling me, even though she knew I was considering a position here. Why? Was she trying to block my path? Or was it just another example of our growing estrangement? At 9:55 a.m., I gathered my notes and headed to the conference room. I could hear voices as I approached, laughter, casual conversation. I straightened my shoulders and walked in. The room fell silent. 6 people sat around the table, and at the far end was Melissa. She wore a red power suit, her blonde hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. Her expression shifted from surprise to something darker when she saw me. "Amanda," she said, her voice perfectly controlled. "What a surprise." "Hello, Melissa," I replied, equally composed. I didn't expect to see you here either. James Carson entered behind me. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce our new regional director, Amanda Wilson. She'll be overseeing all operational divisions, including marketing, sales, and product development. I watched the color drain from Melissa's face as she realized what this meant. I would be her boss. The meeting proceeded with each division head presenting their quarterly results. When Melissa's turn came, she spoke confidently about new client acquisitions, conveniently glossing over the retention problems I'd noticed in the reports. I made notes but didn't challenge her directly, not yet. After the meeting, I approached her. Do you have a moment to talk privately? Actually, I have a team meeting scheduled, she replied coolly. Perhaps later this week. This won't take long, I insisted. Reluctantly, she followed me to my office. Once the door closed, her demeanor changed completely. What the hell, Amanda? You took this job knowing I work here. I had no idea you were at Carson, I countered. You told everyone you were at Horizon. I moved 3 months ago. Mom and Dad knew. They said you'd changed jobs, not where to. Why wouldn't you tell me you were coming to Carson? Melissa crossed her arms. Why would I? We barely talk anymore. And now you're my boss. This is unbelievable. Look, I said, trying to be reasonable, this is awkward for both of us. But we can make it work. I'm here to help the company improve. Save the corporate speak, she interrupted. We both know how this plays out. You've always wanted to one-up me, and now you have the perfect opportunity. Her words stung. That's not true. I took this job because it's a good opportunity for me, not because of you. Right, she said sarcastically. The golden child gets another gold star. Before I could respond, her phone buzzed. She checked it and moved toward the door. I have to go. My team is waiting. We should talk more about this, I said. I don't think there's anything to discuss. You're the boss now. Congratulations. Her voice dripped with resentment. As she left, I sank into my chair, a knot forming in my stomach. This was going to be more complicated than I'd imagined. But I couldn't let personal feelings interfere with my job. Carson had hired me to turn things around, and that's what I intended to do, even if it meant making difficult decisions about my sister's department. What I didn't realize was that Melissa had already made her decision about how to handle my presence, and it wouldn't involve professional courtesy or sisterly love. By the end of the day, I would understand just how far our relationship had deteriorated, and how little family loyalty meant to the sister I thought I knew. By early afternoon, I had finished reviewing the detailed performance reports for each division. The marketing department's numbers were particularly troubling: high operational costs, declining client satisfaction scores, and an unusual turnover rate among junior staff. I needed to understand what was happening, and that meant visiting the marketing floor. The marketing department occupied the entire 10th floor, a large open-plan space with glass-walled conference rooms along the perimeter. As I stepped off the elevator, I immediately sensed the difference in atmosphere from the executive floor. Music played softly from someone's desk, and clusters of employees huddled around computer screens, talking animatedly. It had the energetic vibe typical of creative departments, but something felt off. Conversations halted as I passed, replaced by whispers and sidelong glances. I spotted Melissa in the largest conference room, standing before a whiteboard covered with campaign slogans. Around the table sat her core team, 5 people who, according to the files, had followed her from Horizon. They were laughing at something she said, the kind of easy camaraderie that comes from a long working relationship. I knocked on the glass door and entered. Again, silence fell immediately. Sorry to interrupt, I said. I am doing rounds to meet all the teams. I thought I'd start with marketing. Melissa's smile was tight. Of course. Everyone, this is Amanda Wilson, our new regional director. The emphasis on my title was subtle but unmistakable. And my sister, she added, almost as an afterthought. The team exchanged glances. A man with fashionably tousled hair and designer glasses, Ryan Cooper, creative director, according to my notes, raised his eyebrows. Your sister? You never mentioned she was joining Carson. It was as much a surprise to me as it is to you, Melissa replied. Amanda, this is my core team. Ryan Cooper, creative director, Sophia Chen, digital strategy, Marcus Jeffries, client relations, Diana Patel, media buying, and Tyler West, analytics. Each nodded as they were introduced, their expressions ranging from curiosity to outright suspicion. Nice to meet you all, I said. I've been reviewing the department's performance metrics. I'd like to discuss some concerns I have. Ryan snorted. First day and already finding problems. That's got to be a record. Diana, a sharp-featured woman with immaculate makeup, placed a hand on his arm in warning. We are always open to constructive feedback, she said smoothly. Great, I replied, refusing to be intimidated. Because there's a lot to discuss. Client retention is down 22% compared to last year. Operational costs have increased by 30% with no corresponding increase in revenue. And I've noticed an unusual pattern of junior staff leaving within months of being hired. Melissa's face hardened. We're in a transition period. We brought over major clients from Horizon, but there's always adjustment time when changing agencies. It's been 3 months, I pointed out. And the numbers are getting worse, not better. Tyler, a young man with a perpetually bored expression, leaned back in his chair. Numbers don't tell the whole story. We are building relationships that will pay off long term. I hope so, I said. Because right now, the story they are telling isn't great. Melissa glanced at her watch in an exaggerated motion. We are actually in the middle of brainstorming for the Lux Hotel's pitch. It's tomorrow, and we really need to focus. I nodded. I understand. But I'd like to see the pitch before it goes out. And I want to schedule a comprehensive review of all current campaigns and accounts for later this week. The team exchanged looks again. Something unspoken passed between them. Is that really necessary? Melissa asked, her voice taking on a dangerous edge I recognized from childhood arguments. We've been handling these clients for years. We know what works. It's standard procedure for a new director to review ongoing work, I said firmly. I'll expect the materials on my desk by tomorrow morning, along with your availability for a meeting on Thursday. As I turned to leave, I heard Ryan mutter something that sounded suspiciously like power trip. I paused at the door. Oh, and I'd like to speak with some of your junior team members as well. The exit interviews from those who left cited hostile work environment as a common reason. I'd like to understand what that means. Melissa's face flushed with anger. My team is not hostile. I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding, I said. But I need to investigate all the same. That's my job. I left the conference room and walked among the cubicles, introducing myself to the junior staff. They seemed nervous, but relieved that someone was taking an interest. One young woman, Jessica, an assistant account manager, was particularly forthcoming. It's intense here, she whispered, glancing toward the conference room. The core team, we call them the Horizon 6, they are like a clique. They make all the decisions, take credit for good ideas, and blame junior staff when things go wrong. 3 people quit last month alone. Thank you for your honesty, I said. I'll be looking into this. As I headed back to the elevator, I felt eyes following me. Through the glass wall, I could see Melissa and her team in intense discussion, repeatedly glancing in my direction. The dynamics were worse than I'd anticipated. This wasn't just a department that needed restructuring, it was a toxic environment created and maintained by my own sister. Back in my office, I called James Carson to brief him on my initial findings. The marketing situation is concerning, I told him. Melissa's core team seems to be operating as a separate entity within the department. There are serious morale issues among junior staff. James sighed. I was afraid of that. When we brought Melissa and her team over from Horizon, it was a package deal. They've been inseparable, and frankly, somewhat problematic. But they brought major clients with them, so we've been reluctant to rock the boat. Those clients are starting to leave, I pointed out. And the workplace culture they've created is driving away talented junior staff. What do you recommend? He asked. Let me dig deeper, I said. I need to understand the full scope of the problem before making recommendations. And you're sure you can remain objective, given your relationship with Melissa? I thought about the cold, dismissive woman I'd encountered today, so different from the sister I grew up with. Yes, I said firmly. I can be objective. What I didn't tell James was that objectivity was becoming easier by the minute. The sister I knew would never have created a toxic workplace or bullied junior staff. The woman I'd seen today was a stranger wearing my sister's face, and I had a responsibility to address the problems she was causing, both for the company and for the employees suffering under her leadership. As I organized my notes for the next day, I didn't realize that Melissa was already plotting her response to my investigation, a public humiliation designed to put me in my place and demonstrate to everyone exactly who held the real power in the marketing department. By tomorrow afternoon, our sisterly conflict would explode into something neither of us could take back. The following day began with an email from Melissa. The Lux Hotel's pitch materials had been placed in a shared drive, not on my desk as requested. It was a small act of defiance, but it set the tone for what was to come. The pitch itself was flashy but lacked substance, focusing more on visual appeal than strategic thinking. It needed significant revisions before it could go to the client. I called Melissa's direct line. No answer. I sent an email outlining my concerns and requesting an urgent meeting. 20 minutes later, her response arrived, team heading to Lux now. We'll discuss after. This was unacceptable. I headed down to the marketing floor, where I found only junior staff. The entire core team had left for the pitch meeting, without informing me or addressing my concerns about their presentation. I returned to my office and called James Carson. Melissa took her team to the Lux pitch without incorporating my feedback, I explained. The presentation has serious flaws that could cost us the account. James sounded frustrated but not surprised. This is exactly the kind of behavior that's been a problem. Their approach is to act first and ask forgiveness later, if at all. I've scheduled a department-wide meeting for this afternoon, I told him. I intend to address these issues directly. Good luck, he said. You'll need it. At 3 p.m., I headed to the large conference room on the marketing floor. I had prepared a presentation outlining my observations, concerns, and initial recommendations for improving department performance. It was direct but professional, focusing on facts rather than personalities. The room was full when I arrived. Junior staff sat nervously around the perimeter, while Melissa and her core team occupied the center of the table, looking relaxed and somewhat smug. I later learned they had won the Lux account despite my concerns about their pitch. Thank you all for coming, I began, connecting my laptop to the projector. I've spent the past 2 days reviewing our marketing operations, and I'd like to share my findings. Melissa interrupted before I could continue. Before we start, I'd like to announce some good news. We've just secured the Lux Hotel's account, a $2 million contract that will significantly boost our quarterly numbers. Applause broke out, led enthusiastically by the core team. I waited for it to subside. "Congratulations," I said. "That's good news. However, there are still serious issues we need to address." "Issues?" Ryan interjected with a laugh. "We just landed a major client. What issues could possibly matter more than results?" "Long-term sustainability, for one," I replied. "Client retention, operational efficiency, workplace culture." "Oh, here we go," Tyler muttered loudly enough for everyone to hear. "The corporate consultant is going to tell the creatives how to do their jobs." Melissa didn't stop him. Instead, she smiled slightly and took a sip from her Coke can. The atmosphere in the room shifted, tension building as the junior staff watched the dynamic unfold. "I'm not here to tell anyone how to do their job," I clarified. "I'm here to ensure the department functions effectively as a whole. And right now, it isn't." I displayed my first slide, a graph showing client retention rates over the past year. We are losing clients almost as quickly as we are acquiring them. This indicates that while the initial pitches are strong, the ongoing service isn't meeting expectations. Diana rolled her eyes. "Clients are fickle. Everyone knows that." "Not at this rate," I countered. "Industry standard is around 10% annual churn. We are at 28%. I moved to the next slide, operational costs versus revenue. We are spending more to make less. That's not sustainable." Marcus spoke up for the first time. "Quality costs money. You want award-winning campaigns. They don't come cheap." "I want effective campaigns that deliver results for our clients," I corrected. "Awards are nice, but ROI is what keeps clients with us." The core team exchanged looks, clearly dismissive of my approach. But it was the next slide that truly sparked the confrontation: employee turnover rates, with direct quotes from exit interviews. "Hostile work environment," I read. "Credit stealing, bullying, favoritism. These are terms that appear repeatedly in exit interviews with junior staff." The atmosphere in the room became frigid. Junior employees stared at their notebooks, avoiding eye contact with the core team. "This is ridiculous," Melissa said, standing up. "We have high standards. If some people can't handle the pressure of a competitive industry, that's not our problem. Creating a toxic workplace is very much our problem," I replied. "It drives away talent, reduces productivity, and ultimately damages our reputation in the industry." "Toxic?" Melissa laughed incredulously. "We are not toxic. We are successful. There's a difference. Success isn't measured just in accounts won," I said. "It's also about building a sustainable team and maintaining long-term client relationships. Right now, we are failing at both." Ryan stood up now too, his face flushed with anger. "Who are you to waltz in here after 2 days and tell us we are failing? We've been building this team for years. We know what works." "The numbers suggest otherwise," I said calmly. Melissa walked slowly around the table toward me, her Coke can still in hand. "Let me tell you something about numbers, dear sister," she said, her voice dangerously soft. "They don't capture the reality of creative work. They don't show the late nights, the rejected ideas, the constant pressure to innovate. They don't show how hard we've worked to build this department." She was standing directly in front of me now. The room had gone completely silent. "What they do show," I replied, "is that whatever you're doing isn't working. And as regional director, it's my responsibility to fix that." Something changed in Melissa's eyes then, a flash of the little girl who used to scream when she didn't get her way. Before I could react, she raised her Coke can and threw its contents directly in my face. The cold liquid splashed across my face and down my cream silk blouse, staining it instantly. Gasps echoed around the room. I stood frozen, cola dripping from my chin onto the carpet. "Fix that," Melissa hissed. For a moment, no one moved. Then Ryan and Tyler began to laugh, followed nervously by Diana and Marcus. Sophia looked uncomfortable, but remained silent. The junior staff appeared horrified. Melissa turned to address the room. Meeting adjourned. Everyone back to work. As people began to file out, some avoiding looking at me, some smirking, Melissa picked up a box of tissues from the conference table and tossed it at me. "You should clean yourself up," she said loudly. "You're making a mess on the carpet." I could have left then, gone to my office to change into the spare clothes I kept there. But something inside me refused to give her that satisfaction. Still dripping with cola, I stayed exactly where I was and looked directly at her. "Is this how you handle professional disagreement, Melissa? No wonder this department is in trouble." Her smile faltered slightly. "This department was fine until you showed up. No one asked for your help." "Carson Enterprises asked for my help," I replied. "And after today, I have an even clearer picture of what needs to change." "Oh," she taunted. "And what's that?" "Leadership," I said simply. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Good luck with that. My team follows me, not you. And I brought the clients. Without us, there is no marketing department." As she and her team left the room, the remaining junior staff looked at me uncertainly. Jessica, the assistant account manager, who had spoken to me the previous day, approached with more tissues. "I'm so sorry that happened," she said quietly. "That was completely unprofessional." "Thank you," I replied, dabbing at my blouse. "But I'm afraid the blouse is ruined." "She shouldn't have done that," Jessica continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But you should know, they are planning to go to the board if you try to make changes. They think their client relationships give them leverage." I nodded, processing this information. "Thank you for telling me." As I cleaned myself up as best I could, I thought about what had just transpired. The sister I grew up with would never have behaved this way. The cold, calculating woman, who had just humiliated me in front of her entire department, was someone else entirely. And she had just made a catastrophic professional mistake. I've been in this industry long enough to see how these stories unfold. You've probably experienced workplace drama too, maybe not a Coke to the face, but we've all seen toxic behaviors that can poison an entire team. If you're watching right now, I'd love to hear about the worst workplace behavior you've ever witnessed. Drop it in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this wild family revenge tale, remember to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about justice in the workplace. Don't leave yet, you won't believe what happens next when I decide how to handle my sister's public betrayal. Back in my office, I changed into the spare outfit I kept for emergencies. A black dress that was more formal than I usually preferred, but would have to do. As I dabbed at the cola stains on my ruined blouse, I felt a strange calm descend. The shock and humiliation were giving way to cold determination. This wasn't just about sibling rivalry anymore, it was about professional conduct and the future of the company. I opened my laptop and began to type an email to James Carson, detailing exactly what had happened in the meeting. I included my observations about the department's performance issues and the hostile workplace Melissa and her team had created. I was careful to be factual rather than emotional, though my hands shook slightly as I typed. Before sending it, I paused. Was I acting out of revenge? Would our parents see this as a betrayal of family loyalty? I thought about our mother's oft-repeated phrase, "Blood is thicker than water." But she had never envisioned a situation where one daughter would publicly humiliate the other in a professional setting. No, this wasn't about revenge. This was about doing the job I was hired to do, turning around a dysfunctional division. The fact that my sister was at the center of the dysfunction was unfortunate, but irrelevant to my professional responsibilities. I sent the email and immediately received an automatic response. James Carson was on a flight to New York and would be unavailable until the following morning. This gave me time to formulate a more comprehensive plan. I spent the rest of the afternoon reviewing personnel files for everyone in the marketing department, paying special attention to Melissa's core team, the Horizon 6, as the junior staff called them. What I found confirmed my suspicions. Each had been hired with significantly above-market salaries. Their performance metrics were mediocre at best, with client satisfaction scores consistently lower than industry standards. And most troublingly, there were multiple HR complaints from junior staff that had been filed and subsequently buried. At 6 p.m., I received a visit from Patricia Henderson, the HR director, a no-nonsense woman in her 50s who had been with Carson for over a decade. "I heard about what happened in the marketing meeting," she said without preamble. "Word travels fast around here." "I'm sure it does," I replied, gesturing for her to sit. "This isn't the first incident involving Melissa and her team," Patricia continued. "We've had complaints before, but they've always been protected because of the clients they brought with them." "Not anymore," I said firmly. "I need to see all the HR complaints filed against them. And I need to understand why they weren't addressed." Patricia nodded. "I can help with that. For what it's worth, many of us have been waiting for someone to finally hold them accountable. Why hasn't anyone before now?" She sighed. "Carson was desperate after losing the Lux account last year. When Melissa offered to bring it and several other Horizon clients with her, the previous regional director gave her carte blanche. He was let go 2 months ago because he couldn't control the situation he'd created. This was valuable context. So I'm not the first person to try to address these issues. No, but you might be the first with enough authority to actually do something about it. The question is, are you willing to fire your own sister if that's what it takes?" I didn't hesitate. "If that's what's best for the company and the employees who work here, yes." Patricia smiled slightly. "Good. Then let me help you build a case that even the board can't ignore." For the next 2 hours, Patricia and I compiled documentation, performance metrics, HR complaints, exit interviews, financial records showing excessive expenses. The picture that emerged was damning. Melissa and her team had created a fiefdom within the marketing department, operating by their own rules while intimidating anyone who challenged them. "What about the clients they brought over?" I asked. "Melissa seems to think they give her leverage." "That's been their protection so far," Patricia admitted. "But I've been tracking client satisfaction scores. They are declining across the board. 3 of the original clients they brought from Horizon have already left, citing poor service and missed deadlines. Including Lux Hotels. Lux left last year, but they've apparently just won them back today. So they are not irreplaceable," I mused. "No one is," Patricia said. "And between us, I've heard rumors that some of their client relationships aren't as solid as they claim. They take all the credit, but it's often the junior staff doing the real work to keep clients happy." This aligned with what I'd observed. "I need to speak with those junior team members more thoroughly." "I can arrange that, but discreetly. They are afraid of retaliation." "Not for long," I promised. After Patricia left, I stayed late, formulating a strategy. I needed to move carefully but decisively. Melissa clearly expected me to run to James Carson immediately, which is why she had chosen a time when he was unavailable for her public display of disrespect. She was buying time to rally support and possibly approach the board herself, as Jessica had warned. But I had spent years turning around failing divisions. I knew how to handle entrenched problems and resistant leadership. The key was to be thorough, strategic, and uncompromising. I created a detailed plan with 3 phases. Phase 1, documentation and investigation, 1 to 2 days. Compile all existing evidence of performance issues and workplace misconduct. Conduct confidential interviews with junior staff to gather additional testimony. Review client accounts to identify which were truly dependent on Melissa's team. Phase 2. Alternative solutions, 2 to 3 days. Identify talented junior staff who could potentially step into leadership roles. Create contingency plans for managing key client relationships if Melissa and her team were removed. Develop a restructuring plan for the entire marketing department. Phase 3, Implementation, 1 day. Present findings and recommendations to James Carson. Execute the approved plan swiftly and decisively to minimize disruption. Communicate changes to clients and staff in a way that inspired confidence. By midnight, I had a comprehensive strategy. The confrontation in the conference room had been unpleasant, but it had also been revealing. Melissa had shown her true colors not just to me, but to the entire department. She had demonstrated precisely the kind of toxic leadership that was driving away talent and damaging the company. As I prepared to leave the office, my phone buzzed with a text from Melissa. "Hope you got the stains out of your blouse. Maybe next time you'll think twice before trying to tell me how to run my department." I didn't respond. There was nothing to say that wouldn't be better expressed through actions. Our parents had always taught us that actions have consequences. It was time for Melissa to learn that lesson in a professional context. What she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly anticipate, was how thoroughly I intended to address the problems she and her team had created. She thought she had won today's battle with her public display of dominance. But I was about to win the war. The next morning, I arrived at the office by 6:30 a.m., determined to be well prepared before most employees, especially Melissa and her team, arrived. James Carson's flight was scheduled to land at 7:15 a.m., and he had agreed to meet me in his office at 8:30. That gave me 2 hours to finalize my presentation and gather any last-minute evidence. Patricia from HR met me in my office at 7 a.m. with a thick folder of documentation. "These are all the buried HR complaints," she explained. 15 in total over the past 3 months. Everything from verbal abuse to taking credit for others' work to making junior staff work unpaid overtime. "This is extremely helpful," I said, flipping through the pages. "Did you manage to arrange those confidential interviews?" Patricia nodded. 6 junior team members are willing to speak with you. They'll come to conference room C throughout the day, staggered so it doesn't look suspicious. I've told them you're conducting general department interviews. Perfect. And what about the client information? That was trickier, she admitted. But I spoke with accounting. They've provided detailed billing records for each client Melissa and her team brought over. There's something interesting there, the Lux Hotel's account they supposedly won back yesterday. The paperwork was already in process 2 weeks ago. Yesterday's pitch was essentially a formality. So they lied about winning it yesterday to undermine my concerns. It appears so. I added this information to my growing file. By 8:15, I had a comprehensive presentation ready for James Carson. It detailed the performance issues, toxic workplace environment, financial discrepancies, and my proposed solution, replacing Melissa and her core team with promoted junior staff who had demonstrated talent and commitment, supported by new hires as necessary. James Carson looked grim as I walked him through the evidence. "I knew there were issues," he said, "but I had no idea how systemic the problems were. The Coke incident alone would be grounds for disciplinary action, but this pattern of behavior." He shook his head. "What's your recommendation?" "Clean slate," I replied without hesitation. "Melissa and her core team need to be removed. Immediately and simultaneously. All 6 of them." James looked concerned. "That's our entire marketing leadership. What about the clients?" I showed him the client satisfaction trends. They are already at risk. And based on my interviews with junior staff, the relationships are being maintained primarily by them anyway. Melissa and her team take the credit, but they are not the ones doing the daily work that keeps clients happy. Even so, this is a major restructuring. The board will want reassurances. I've identified 3 junior team members who are ready for promotion to leadership roles. Jessica Chen in account management, David Rivera in creative, and Alicia Washington in strategy. With proper support, they can stabilize the department while we recruit additional experienced talent. James studied the information I'd provided. You've been thorough, I'll give you that. But firing your own sister, are you sure you can handle that personally? I have to, I said firmly. She needs to understand this isn't personal vendetta, it's a business decision based on performance and conduct. And frankly, after yesterday's display, I don't think anyone would question the justification. After nearly an hour of discussion, James agreed to my plan. How do you want to handle the logistics? Quickly and cleanly, I replied. Security escorts, immediate revocation of system access, and clear communication to the rest of the team about the transition. We can't risk giving them time to delete files or contact clients directly. Agreed. When do you want to do this? Today. This morning, if possible. The longer we wait, the more time they have to undermine the process. James nodded. I'll have security and IT standing by. Let's do this at 11 a.m. I spent the next hour in confidential interviews with junior staff, confirming what I already suspected. Melissa and her team had created a culture of fear while taking credit for the work of others. By 10:45, I was ready. I texted Patricia, 11 a.m. Conference room A. At precisely 11:00, security personnel discreetly positioned themselves near the marketing department. Patricia and I, accompanied by James Carson, walked to Melissa's office. She looked up in surprise when all 3 of us entered. What's this about? She asked, her voice edged with suspicion. Melissa, I began, based on a thorough review of department performance, workplace conduct issues, and yesterday's incident, we've made the decision to terminate your employment with Carson Enterprises, effective immediately. Her face went from shock to rage in seconds. You can't be serious. This is because I threw a drink at you. That's petty, even for you, Amanda. This decision is based on multiple factors, James interjected. Including, but not limited to creating a hostile work environment, misrepresenting client relationships, and failure to meet performance standards. The rest of your team is being notified simultaneously, I added. Security will escort you to collect personal belongings, and then you'll be escorted from the building. My team. Melissa stood up, her voice rising. You're firing my entire team. You can't do that. We have clients. Major accounts. Clients who have been expressing increasing dissatisfaction, I replied calmly. And accounts that will be better served by staff who aren't creating a toxic workplace. This is about yesterday, isn't it? She hissed. You couldn't handle being put in your place, so you run to the CEO and cry about your mean big sister. I maintained my professional demeanor. This is about doing what's best for Carson Enterprises and its employees. Security will accompany you now. As security led her away, she turned back to me. Mom and Dad will never forgive you for this. Family comes first, remember. Professional conduct comes first in a workplace, I replied. And a sister who respected family wouldn't have humiliated me in front of an entire department. Throughout the marketing floor, similar scenes were playing out as Ryan, Sophia, Marcus, Diana, and Tyler were simultaneously informed of their termination. Security had been instructed to keep them separate to prevent them from coordinating any response. IT had already revoked their system access. At 11:30, I called the remaining marketing staff together. 28 nervous faces looked back at me. As you may have noticed, some changes have taken place this morning, I began. Melissa Wilson and her core team are no longer with Carson Enterprises. This was a difficult, but necessary decision based on performance issues and workplace conduct concerns that many of you have experienced firsthand. I could see relief washing over many faces, though uncertainty remained. I want to assure you that your jobs are secure. In fact, several of you will be offered promotion opportunities in the coming days as we restructure the department. Carson Enterprises values your contributions, your ideas, and your professionalism. Jessica, who I had already spoken to about taking on a leadership role, gave me a small, hopeful smile. This is a fresh start for the marketing department, I continued. I'll be working closely with all of you to ensure a smooth transition. My door is always open if you have concerns or ideas. Together, we are going to build a department where talent is recognized, collaboration is valued, and success is shared. The response was cautious optimism. After years under Melissa's toxic leadership, it would take time for them to believe that real change was possible. But I was committed to demonstrating a different kind of leadership, one based on respect, transparency, and results. By the end of the day, I had promoted Jessica, David, and Alicia to interim leadership roles and begun the process of reaching out to key clients to assure them of continuity. To my surprise, most seemed relieved by the changes. One client representative even confided, "We were considering taking our business elsewhere." Melissa's team was increasingly difficult to work with. As I prepared to leave the office that evening, my phone rang. It was our mother. "Amanda," she began, her voice tight with emotion. "Melissa just told us what happened. How could you fire your own sister? Family is supposed to come first." I had anticipated this call. "Mom," Melissa threw a Coke in my face in front of her entire department and made me clean it up. "That's not how family treats each other either." There was a long silence. "She did what? She didn't mention that part, did she? Or the toxic workplace she created? Or the multiple HR complaints against her and her team? She said you were jealous of her success and fired her out of spite." "I fired her because she was bad at her job and worse as a leader. I have documentation of everything if you want to see it." Another silence. "Then, I need to talk to your father about this." "But Amanda, if what you're saying is true, that's not how we raised Melissa to behave." "I know, Mom. It's not how you raised either of us. That's why this was so difficult." After we hung up, I sat in my office, looking out at the Chicago skyline as twilight descended. The day had been exhausting but necessary. I had done my job as regional director, making the tough decisions needed to turn around a failing division. The fact that those decisions involved my sister was unfortunate, but unavoidable. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Ryan Cooper. "You have no idea what you've just started. This isn't over." I didn't respond. I had anticipated that Melissa and her team wouldn't go quietly. But I had also prepared for whatever they might try next. I had the documentation, the support of senior leadership, and the gratitude of the remaining marketing staff. Whatever came next, I was ready. What I couldn't have anticipated was just how desperate Melissa would become, or how her attempts at revenge would ultimately backfire in ways that would change both our lives forever. 3 months passed since the day I fired Melissa and her team. The marketing department at Carson Enterprises had undergone a remarkable transformation. Under the leadership of Jessica, David, and Alicia, client satisfaction scores had improved by 34%, operational costs had decreased by 22%, and not a single employee had resigned. The toxic culture had been replaced by one of collaboration and mutual respect. I was reviewing the quarterly reports in my office when James Carson stopped by, a broad smile on his face. The board is thrilled with the marketing turnaround, he announced. They've approved bonuses for the entire department and specifically commended your leadership through the transition. That's wonderful news, I replied. The team deserves the recognition. They've worked incredibly hard. They have, but they couldn't have done it without your willingness to make difficult decisions. He sat down across from me. By the way, have you heard anything more from your sister or her team? I sighed. They've been busy. In the weeks following their termination, Melissa and her team had launched a coordinated campaign to discredit me and damage Carson Enterprises. They had contacted clients with false information about the company's financial stability. They had posted negative reviews on industry websites. Ryan had even attempted to hack into our system, triggering security protocols that resulted in his arrest for corporate espionage. But their most personal attack had been directed at my relationship with my family. Melissa had convinced our parents that I had orchestrated her firing out of childhood jealousy and resentment. For several weeks, they refused to speak to me, believing her version of events. It's been challenging, I admitted to James. But we expected some backlash. What I didn't tell him was how deeply the family rift had affected me. Despite the professional satisfaction of seeing the marketing department thrive, the estrangement from my parents had been painful. Well, I have some information that might help, James said. Our legal team has been monitoring their activities. Apparently, they've been approaching other companies in the industry, offering to bring clients with them, clients they don't actually have relationships with. Several firms have contacted us to verify their claims. That doesn't surprise me, I said. They did the same thing when they came here from Horizon. Yes, but this time it's backfired. Word has spread in the industry about their unethical practices. From what I've heard, they are having trouble finding new positions. This was the first I'd heard about Melissa's employment situation. Despite everything, I couldn't help feeling a twinge of concern for my sister. There's more, James continued. Horizon Marketing has reached out to us. Apparently, when Melissa and her team left, they took confidential client information. Horizon is preparing legal action against them, not us. They wanted to give us a courtesy heads-up since you're Melissa's sister. I processed this information. Thank you for letting me know. After James left, I sat contemplating what he'd told me. Melissa's behavior had finally caught up with her. The tactics that had worked for her in the past, taking credit for others' work, claiming client relationships she didn't truly own, bullying those who challenged her, were now being exposed. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was my father. Amanda, he said, his voice somber. We need to talk about your sister. What about her? I asked cautiously. She's in trouble. Serious trouble. Horizon is suing her and her team for theft of confidential information. She could face criminal charges. I just heard about that, I replied. I'm sorry she's in that position. There's more, he continued. She's been unable to find another job. Her reputation in the industry is, well, it's not good. She and her team apparently made a lot of enemies over the years. That doesn't surprise me, I said. But I'm not sure what you expect me to do about it. There was a long pause. Your mother and I owe you an apology, he finally said. Melissa showed us the surveillance video from the conference room that day. We saw what she did to you, throwing that drink in your face. That was inexcusable. My heart skipped a beat. There was video. Apparently so. She didn't know about it until recently when someone from Carson sent it to her as evidence of workplace misconduct. She showed it to us trying to explain that it wasn't as bad as it looked, but it was worse than she had described. I see, I said, wondering who at Carson had sent the video. Probably Patricia from HR, documenting the case for potential legal issues. We should have heard your side before jumping to conclusions, my father continued. Family loyalty goes both ways, and Melissa violated that when she treated you that way. Your mother and I are truly sorry. Tears pricked my eyes. Thank you, Dad. That means a lot to me. Melissa is at our house now, he said. She's hit rock bottom. Lost her job, her reputation, possibly facing legal action. She's been staying in our guest room for the past 2 weeks. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, meaning it despite everything. She wants to talk to you, he said. To apologize. Would you be willing to meet with her? I hesitated. Part of me wanted nothing to do with Melissa after her campaign to turn our family against me. But another part remembered the sister I grew up with, before ambition and insecurity had twisted her into someone I barely recognized. I'll think about it, I promised. That weekend, after much reflection, I drove to our parents' house in Columbus. The familiar 2-story colonial brought back memories of childhood. Melissa and I playing in the yard, sharing secrets in our bedroom, promising to always be there for each other. Where had that bond gone? When had competition replaced connection? My mother greeted me at the door with tears and a tight hug. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. We should have trusted you. Inside, seated on the living room couch, was Melissa. She looked different, smaller somehow, without her designer clothes and confident posture. She wore jeans and a plain sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. When she saw me, she stood up awkwardly. Amanda, she said, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. Thank you for coming. Our parents discreetly left the room, giving us privacy. Dad said you wanted to talk, I said, remaining standing. Melissa nodded. I owe you an apology. Many apologies, actually. She took a deep breath. What I did to you that day in the conference room was inexcusable. Throwing that drink in your face, humiliating you in front of the department. I've been trying to understand why I did it. I'd like to know that too, I said. She sank back onto the couch. When you showed up at Carson as my boss, it felt like college all over again, you getting the scholarship, the praise, the opportunities. I've always felt like I was living in your shadow, never quite measuring up. That wasn't my intention, I said, softening enough to sit in a chair across from her. I had no idea you were at Carson when I took the job. I know that now, she admitted. But at the time, it felt like yet another example of you outshining me. So I lashed out. I thought if I could humiliate you publicly, establish dominance in front of my team, you'd back off and let me run my department my way. Your way wasn't working, I pointed out. The numbers proved that. I know, she said quietly. I've had a lot of time to reflect on that. The tactics that got me ahead in the short term, taking credit, intimidating others, cutting corners, they caught up with me. And now my career is in ruins, my reputation is destroyed, and I'm facing possible legal action. Her eyes filled with tears. The worst part is that I deserved it. Everything that's happening to me now, it's exactly what I've earned through my own actions. I studied my sister, trying to gauge her sincerity. What do you want from me, Melissa? Nothing, she said, wiping her eyes. I don't deserve your help or forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did was wrong, not just to you, but to everyone on that team. And I'm sorry. For the first time in years, I saw a glimpse of the sister I had grown up with, vulnerable, genuine, human. Not the calculating, cold person who had thrown a drink in my face. What will you do now? I asked. I don't know, she admitted. No one in marketing will touch me. Horizon is pursuing legal action. I'm considering leaving the industry altogether, maybe even moving to a different city for a fresh start. I nodded, considering her situation. The lawsuit from Horizon, how serious is it? Pretty serious. They have evidence that we took confidential client information when we left. Ryan was the one who actually took the files, but I knew about it. We all did. And what about the rest of your team? Scattered. Ryan's facing those hacking charges. The others are struggling to find work, just like me. We've all been blacklisted in the industry. I sat back, processing everything she'd told me. My sister had made terrible choices, and was now facing the consequences. Justice had been served without any further action on my part. The question was, what happened next? Family loyalty had been my parents' mantra throughout our childhood. But true loyalty wasn't about blindly supporting someone's destructive behavior, it was about helping them become their best self, even when that meant facing difficult truths. Melissa, I said finally, I can't fix this for you. What happened at Carson, the lawsuit from Horizon, your reputation in the industry, those are all direct results of your choices. But what? She asked, a flicker of hope in her eyes. But I do believe in second chances. If you're serious about making changes, about becoming the person I know you can be, then I'll support that journey. Not by making the consequences disappear, but by standing with you as you face them and learn from them. Tears spilled down her cheeks. I don't deserve a second chance. Maybe not, I agreed. But family means giving one anyway. On one condition. What's that? Complete honesty from now on. With me, with our parents, with yourself. No more manipulation, no more lies. She nodded, wiping her tears. I can do that. I want to do that. That conversation marked the beginning of a new chapter for Melissa and me. It wasn't an instant reconciliation. Trust takes time to rebuild after being so thoroughly broken. But it was a start. In the months that followed, Melissa negotiated a settlement with Horizon, accepting responsibility for her actions and agreeing to financial restitution. She began therapy to address the insecurity and ruthless ambition that had driven her destructive behavior. And with my cautious endorsement, she found a position at a small non-profit organization, far from the high-pressure corporate world where she had thrived but lost her way. As for me, Carson Enterprises promoted me to Executive Vice President 6 months after the marketing department turnaround. The role gave me broader oversight of company operations and a seat on the executive committee. Jessica Chen was officially named marketing director, turning what had once been the most toxic department into a model of collaborative success. Our parents hosted a small family dinner to celebrate my promotion. As we gathered around the table, my father raised his glass in a toast. To Amanda, whose integrity and courage remind us that true leadership isn't about power over others, but empowering others to succeed. Melissa raised her glass too. And to second chances, she added quietly. And the sister who was brave enough to give me one when I least deserved it. Our eyes met across the table, not as rivals, not as former colleagues, but as sisters finding our way back to the bond we once shared. Different now, tempered by experience and hardship, but perhaps stronger for having been broken and mended. I'd learned that family loyalty isn't about unconditional support for bad behavior. It's about caring enough to hold someone accountable, to show them a better path, and to walk that path with them even when it's difficult. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable destructive patterns, even when it temporarily causes pain. That's my story, how throwing a Coke in my face led to my sister losing her job, her team, and nearly her family, only to find redemption in facing the consequences of her actions. It wasn't the revenge I planned, but rather the justice that naturally followed from truth coming to light. If you've experienced family drama or workplace toxicity like this, I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. How did you handle it? Did karma eventually catch up to the people who wronged you? Remember to like this video if you enjoyed hearing about my experience with workplace justice, and subscribe for more real-life stories about family dynamics, career challenges, and personal growth. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that sometimes the best revenge isn't something you plan, but the natural consequences that follow when people's true colors are revealed. Until next time.